20% of that
We are the Rainbow Company, Limited. We are a privately held corporation with one central purpose. We seek to assist you in the stimulation of your acquired intellectual skills and abilities. We firmly believe that your investment in your education has endowed you with a highly developed mind. Given that you now have an excellent personal tool, we feel that it is now, and only now, something that you should not waste. Each of our products are designed to assist you with the proper maintenance of that invaluable asset. What follows if one of our products? It will speak for itself. We hope that it serves our stated purpose.
No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why.
Something different is designed to address some bumps in the road. I mean, over the course of just day-to-day living life, we sometimes hit bumps in the road, things that trouble us, cause us to be stressed, or create serious discord in our households. These problems may be our fault or somebody else's fault. Either way, here I would like to explore some potential bumps in the road. I am doing this in the spirit of family. Over the past 33 years, as a licensed clinical psychologist, I've learned a few things. I want to share some of them with you, free of charge. Simple trade. You give me your 60 minutes of time, your attention, and possible participation as a caller, and let's see if it's worth your time. I will talk about a particular bump for a few minutes. We will open up the phone lines and with live callers further discuss that bump. Claro. I will summarize the topic in the call and say good night. That's how we roll up in here on Something Different with Dr. Ozzie McDonald.
First, you may only use your first name and state. You can say what you want to say about the topic. No profanity or stuff like that. Please do not be drunk or high. If you say something out of line, I will cut you off. When you call, the computer will keep your phone number. The computer, will randomly select a predetermined number of potential callers. I wish everybody luck. Those people chosen by the computer will be called back by a member of our staff. They will talk with you and make a final selection and put 12 people on the show. The doctor will talk with those people until either he runs out of time or people.
Getting to be a live caller on Something Different with Dr. Ozzie McDonald is a multi-part process. First, we have Rebecca. She's a new model Dell with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and she really smokes. She's faster than a speeding bullet. She takes phone calls at a rate of 316,000 every 18 seconds. When you call me, I mean her, she answers the phone, plays a recorded message. You've been entered into the pool of X number of people, she tells you, and may be called back by Dr. McDonald's assessment team to be on today's show. Rebecca hangs up the phone. While Rebecca was doing all that, she collected some information about you from your caller ID. She collected your full name and address, your apartment or home number in whatever city and state. Don't worry, we do not keep emails up in here either. I have instructed Rebecca to randomly choose 16 potential callers and send their names and phone numbers to the assessment team. These are 30 of the brightest and sharpest people I know. Their job is to screen potential callers and arrive at the chosen 12. They are both fantastic and disrespectful to their elders. Then I end up with 12 bingo balls in my bingo shaker, and I shake the shaker and I select one call at a time. That is how we select the chosen 12 callers every week here on Something Different with Dr. Isaac McDonald. Now, doing the math, if Rebecca collects 318,000 phone calls every 18 seconds, and we have 3 minutes of commercial break while we wait for the callers to call in to Rebecca, let's see now. Let's round up from 18 seconds to 20 seconds, and thereby getting us 3 blocks of 20 seconds every minute, or 9 blocks of 20 seconds. That means 2.8 million phone calls have to be narrowed down by Rebecca to 60 through some kind of random process. So, one person's chances of being a live caller here on Something Different is 12 in 218 million. Just the facts, ma'am. Fair in love and war. For the rest of you who do not have a ghost of a chance of being live callers today, let's play Global Thermonuclear War. Let's play Global Thermonuclear War. Let's play Global Thermonuclear War. No, Hal. Let's play Guessing the Caller's Question. As I present the topic of the day, follow along closely and try to decide what question would you ask me about what I have to say. I mean, did I gloss over something that you think was important? Or did I say something that made you think, like my ex-wife used to say, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard? Whatever. Is there something about the presentation that strikes a note in you? If there is, first thing you need to decide is which caller will ask the question about that. I mean the first, fourth, eighth, or whatever caller, but you must select the caller. If you get both parts correct and have registered your name and answers on my website before the callers came in, and you are the one winner, you will receive $50 via the United States Postal Mail Service from me. No cheating, no cost, just a chance to win some, and take gas money from me to you. No hay problema.
You may only use your first name and state. You can say what you want to say about the topic. No profanity or stuff like that. Please do not be drunk or high. If you say something out of line, I will cut you off. When you call, the computer will keep your phone number. The computer, will randomly select a predetermined number of potential callers. I wish everybody luck. Those people chosen by the computer will be called back by a member of our staff. They will talk with you and make a final selection and put 12 people on the show. The doctor will talk with those people until either he runs out of time or people.
If you feel like happiness is
One time I got a phone call from Clara Irvin, who was the Executive Director of Housing Opportunities Made Equal. She wanted to know if I would see one of her clients who was showing some level of emotional discord that she'd never seen in her years of work in housing discrimination. She gave me several instances. Problems with emotional control, like crying at the drop of a hat, jumping halfway across the room if a sudden noise was made, fighting mad sometimes over nothing, and ignoring much more serious things, problems with eating and sleeping. My scheduled time involved 25% of volunteer work. Boards, committees, writing grants, evaluating programs, etc. As a scientist, I had a number of useful skills and the energy to do them. So yes, I will see her. I saw her and was amazed. This 50-year-old black woman was displaying about 75% of the diagnostic category for post-traumatic stress disorder. Now something was wrong with this picture. At the time, I was a 44-year-old black male and had probably been discriminated against, I don't know, let's say from 14 up, say 30 years, and let's say 10 times a year, so 300 times I had been discriminated against. And shit, ain't never done nothing to me. I couldn't understand it. I talked about it with colleagues and teachers. At the time I was teaching psychopathology at the University of Cincinnati. I talked about it in the barber shop, in the beauty shop, in class discussions. It just simply did not make much sense to me that post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, more on my personal background, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I saw post-traumatic stress disorder up close. So I know post-traumatic stress disorder is a friend of mine. But here was shown a lady who had been discriminated against. She had tried to rent an apartment, and the people had told her that she didn't qualify for the apartment. She made the money, she had a good job, she was a Christian lady, and it just didn't make any sense to her. But I saw her, and we'll call her Eleanor McDonald. That's my sister's name for confidentiality purpose. Although this lady never was a patient, but rather someone I evaluated. And evaluations, I probably did 100 a year.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, according to the Mayo Clinic and others, is a result of a complete system overload. The person simply has more psychologically damaging materials than their psychic can handle, and in sense their entire system goes off balance. PTSD is most often associated with war experiences. Although our military services spend a lot of time preparing you for killing people without remorse or even any real concern, they drill it into you that people dying violently is not really anything to be concerned about. Or body parts flying all over the place is normal and to be expected in war. Sometimes it still gets to some soldiers and they develop post-traumatic stress disorders. Some of the symptoms this lady was exhibiting were psychological in terms of depression, fear, severe anxiety and mistrust. Mood in terms of anger, general mistrust, guilt, hopelessness, and inability to feel pleasure any longer. Sleep in terms of insomnia, nightmares, and sleep deprivation. Cognitive in terms of suicidal thoughts and unwanted thoughts. She displayed signs of acute stress. She was emotionally detached and now frequent headaches. Her symptoms had begun to negatively affect her job performance to the point where her employer had placed her on medical leave because she had previously been an outstanding employee and they wanted the old person back.
But I evaluated her and I did a subsequent interview with her for a cable cast psychological experiment I was conducting at the time. Now, in the experiment, my basic hypothesis was if you face white people with some positive black people who were miles away from the stereotypical black people, it would change their attitudes in a positive manner toward black people. And black people would show measurable positive changes in their self-esteem Now, back to the cable cast psychological experiment. In our initial sample, we had 600 subjects. This was our pre-experimental sample. In our post-experimental sample, we had 420 people, which gave us 420 pre-post assessments. Some general kind of findings were that black people, all black people, showed significant increases in their levels of personal self-esteem and their belief in themselves as worthy people. The white sample showed some different results. White people who had a positive attitude at the beginning of the experiment continued to have a positive attitude with no statistically significant changes. White people who had a negative attitude at the beginning of the experiment had either the same negative attitude or a more negative attitude. I found those results to be interesting, and I published my results in several different places. Now, one of the most interesting kind of things happened. All of a sudden, the volunteer psychologist who puts in time, free time with everybody, and was the toast of the town, now all of a sudden is a wacko. Everybody wanted to see my data. They didn't like my results. Some of the people who wanted to see my data were faculty members from the university, people that I knew. Of course, I was not surprised by their attitudes because I've been watching them for years. But the results suggested that it might be possible to modify some attitudes simply by presenting something on cable. I felt like I was walking in water. Attitudes about themselves. Simple. Now, to test this hypothesis, I presented 13 episodes in a series beginning with an opening balloon explaining how the experiment worked and how you participate. So that people had 2 weeks to receive their questionnaires, fill them out, and get them back to me before the 4th episode. Now, the 4th episode to the 13th episode were actual people from the greater Cincinnati area, college professors, football players, ministers, Imam Bashir, Lyndon Young, policeman. Imam Bashir was a religious leader. Eleanor Smith, college professor. An executive secretary. A bunch of superstars. Anyways, at the end of the last program, you fill out your questionnaires. So I had pre and post questionnaires to look at. And on this project, our staff was 2. Myself and Michael Williams from MKU. Michael taught radio, TV over there, and video stuff. And the first show was the introduction to the experiment. For the second show, I did an interview with myself. Remember now, we were talking circa 1984-85. Anyways, I donned my regular Jerry curl, freshly done, suit, tie, nice shiny shoes, and asked the questions. We waited until about a day before my next appointment at the beauty parlor with Mrs. Bohannon, and I answered the questions. Hair nappy all over the place. Michael put them together with several little twists, like me reminding me that I was supposed to say we'll be right back after the commercial. Those kinds of things. Michael was a genius with the camera, to say the least. I gave her my regular psychological evaluation. Now, this is the scientific part of being a psychologist. We have an accepted standard for this type of work. First, you perform a mental status exam, which provides the psychologist with a good to very good understanding of the person in the room. How well they function, what is their current level of coping ability, what is stressing them now, and what it used to stress them. Been any traumatic experiences? Are they in need of help? If so, what type of help? After extensive research, especially on theories, some of the stuff from Sigmund Freud began to make some sense. If you consider housing as being a basic human need, and deprivation of housing being a serious problem for a person who had that strong need, then the lady's problems started to make sense. Discrimination in housing had affected her core beliefs and stirred them all up, and they no longer held together in a coherent pattern. They had simply provided her with more stress than her system could handle, and post-traumatic stress disorder was her response. Now, my clinical belief was that she did not need psychological help immediately. What she needed was for housing opportunities made equal, and their attorney, Mr. Robert Rothman, to win her case and make the people who discriminated against her pay in real American dollars. And then we would take a look at her again and see if she needed any additional help. Now, back to the cable cast psychological experiment. In our initial sample, we had 600 subjects. This was our pre-experimental sample. In our post-experimental sample, we had 420 people, which gave us 420 pre-post assessments. So general kind of findings were that black people, all black people, showed significant increases in their levels of personal self-esteem and their belief in themselves as worthy people. The white sample showed some different results. White people who had a positive attitude at the beginning of the experiment continued to have a positive attitude with no statistically significant changes. White people who had a negative attitude at the beginning of the experiment had either the same negative attitude or a more negative attitude. I found those results to be interesting, and I published my results in several different places. Now, one of the most interesting kind of things happened. All of a sudden, the volunteer psychologist who puts in time, free time with everybody, and was the toast of the town, now all of a sudden is a wacko. Everybody wanted to see my data. They didn't like my results. Some of the people who wanted to see my data were faculty members from the university, people that I knew. Of course, I was not surprised by their attitudes because I've been watching them for years. But the results suggested that it might be possible to modify some attitudes simply by presenting something on cable. I felt like I was walking in water. In our initial sample, we had 600 subjects. This was our pre-experimental sample. In our experimental sample, we had 420 people, which gave us 420 pre-post assessments. Some general kind of findings were that black people, all black people, showed significant increases in their levels of personal self-esteem and their belief in themselves as worthy people. The white sample showed some different results. White people who had a positive attitude at the beginning of the experiment continued to have a positive attitude with no statistically significant changes. White people who had a negative attitude at the beginning of the experiment had either the same negative attitude or a more negative attitude. I found those results to be interesting, and I published my results in several different places. Now, one of the most interesting kind of things happened. All of a sudden, the volunteer psychologist who puts in time, free time with everybody, and was the toast of the town, now all of a sudden is a wacko. Everybody wanted to see my data. They didn't like my results. Some of the people who wanted to see my data were faculty members from the university, people that I knew. Of course, I was not surprised by their attitudes because I've been watching them for years. But the results suggested that it might be possible to modify some attitudes simply by presenting something on cable. I felt like I was walking in water. Now, are you playing Guess the Question? Now is the deadline. You need to have your question into my website because the phone lines will be open in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.